So for those that do or do not know, there are actually some new updates to the LinkedIn algorithm that you need to know about. There's going to be some high level stuff that Nancy and I are going to cover today, and then there's going to be more basic stuff that you may be familiar with, but maybe you aren't really sure how it applies to you as a coach, as a consultant, as a service professional. But by the end of today's training and today's episode, you're going to understand all that and more. Before we dive in, much like how we've talked about in previous trainings and previous episodes, Nancy and I actually have a brand new LinkedIn scorecard assessment. It takes about 3 minutes to take, and it basically, after taking it, it's going to let you know per your score where you are on the thought leadership scale in regards to LinkedIn. So, profile optimization, the network growth that you have, the content you're creating, all those things will give you a score that will let you know what you need to focus on. For those that are watching on social, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, if you would like to take this free assessment, just type the word me in the comments and we'll send you the link. If you're listening on the podcast, there's going to be a link in the description of the episode, or you can always go to thetimeToGrow.com and you can find the assessment right there on our company homepage. So, Nance, what is the first LinkedIn algorithm update that people need to know?
Yeah, well, I think it's important that we're talking about this. In fact, there was a huge change, right, to the LinkedIn algorithm that came out in May, around May week one. And it's funny because, we do a lot of research, right? We go all around, we look at, top LinkedIn voices, we look at, experts within the LinkedIn community, we look at what LinkedIn's posting themselves. And there were actually articles from LinkedIn, sharing this information. And then it was retracted and then it was reshared. So again, this has been very, very interesting, seeing how this has been unfolding. But the biggest changes, and I want everyone to really, really think about, how this affects how we're showing up, not just on LinkedIn, but as the experts in our space. But, it basically really, really is this different way that LinkedIn is measuring, right, the different types of content that you have out there. And it's actually using a unified, right, AI algorithm, and it's pulling out what content actually gets discovered and ranked in the feed. And it's focusing more than ever on just like a bunch of random stuff and, what's getting likes and engagement and whatever. It's actually saying, where are the experts? Who knows what they're talking about? Who is showing up and helping people? And how is it very, very clear, right? For us to identify, okay, these people should be shared and kind of put out there a little bit more. So we're going to kind of break this down a little bit more. But the thing is this is going to affect, right, the type of content that you're seeing, and it's going to affect the things that we care about, right? The metrics that we're going to be tracking. So again, we'll dive into this a little bit more. But the first thing that I wanted to share kind of around the algorithm is that the AI algorithm actually reads for meaning, not just keywords. So, for example, the old system looked for exact keyword matches, but 360 Brew actually reads for some semantic meaning. So, it means the AI uses world knowledge to understand complex relationships between topics. For example, if you post about renewable energy, the system can connect it to users who engage with content about electrical engineering or nuclear infrastructure, even if they don't follow you. So it's connecting a lot of these things together where before, it was just, grabbing some things and saying, oh, this got a lot of, reshares, we'll just continue to push it out. So specialized content and content where, again, it's hyper focused on a certain topic, it's SEO optimized, it's going to do a lot better, than it has in the past. Scott?
Well, I was at 360 Brew, just for those that don't know, that is what the LinkedIn algorithm is called. And it's open for people to you can literally Google 360 Brew by LinkedIn and you'll read a bunch of articles. LinkedIn is very open about the LinkedIn algorithm and how it works. And and here's the thing. Too many people are taking too many of the wrong advice from people that think they know about the 360 Brew algorithm on LinkedIn because they're quote unquote experts. But LinkedIn is the LinkedIn expert. They're very open. how to take organic advantage of the LinkedIn algorithm by following some of the things that Nancy just kind of alluded to. So, whereas again, it was once more about keywords that are being used, it's the context of the content that you're creating because, LinkedIn has also revealed they're doing a lot of things to combat a lot of the hacks that people actually do on the platform, namely LinkedIn engagement pods. And for those of you that are not familiar with those, that's when a group of people get together, whether they're industry related or not, and they agree, and some of these are paid, so you have to pay to be a part of it. And basically, you're paying to boost your your metrics, meaning it's a group of 30 people that all agree to like and comment on each other's stuff. Everybody posts the same time on specific days. You don't even have to read the content. You just literally like it and you throw a comment. But here's the thing, whereas this was a newer tactic a few years ago, and it may have been really working to grow people's audiences, LinkedIn has clapped back and basically said anyone that you engage with, meaning this is why you have to be very specific. So if someone is performing and participating in an engagement pod, and they go and they like all 30 of those people's content and they comment, LinkedIn is only going to show those people's content in that person's newsfeed. That's it. No one outside of it. So whoever you're engaging with, that is who LinkedIn is going to show you to. So all these people that are participating in these engagement pods are actually hitting a brick wall because the only content they're actually seeing in their own newsfeed are the people in their own engagement pod, which doesn't help them at all. So that is also something that you guys need to know.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, I think the big things also that we need to keep in mind, is we've been talking about this for the longest time. A lot of this is not going to be a huge, huge shift, right? But it is going to be enough of a shift where, we want to be more mindful of certain things. Now, I think it's exciting because more than ever, right? We are able to come up with different content ideas. We're able to really, reach out to our audience, connect more than ever. We're able to actually find out the things that they're struggling for or struggling with. But the thing is I just want you to keep thinking that LinkedIn is moving from just more content and just kind of just throwing stuff out there to more relevant content, right, to the right people. So the other thing that I want to share with you guys, is the importance of your profile, right? Your LinkedIn profile. Um, so the thing is if your LinkedIn profile is not set up the right way, right? You don't have the specific keywords in there, right? You don't have it filled out so it's super clear for your audience to understand who you are, who you help, and what do you do. That's going to be the first thing that we'll always recommend people to do, even as you're and before you're posting content. Get that profile right. Make it so that it is searchable so people understand what you do because your profile matters more than you think. Your content doesn't just get posted and sit out there all by itself. LinkedIn actually looks at signals from your profile, your content history, your engagement patterns, your professional identity to understand exactly where you fit. And that means your profile should clearly answer, like I said, who you help, what problem do you solve, what do you want to be known for? What topics do you consistently talk about? And why someone should trust you. So this is why, right? Your headline, your about section, your featured section, and all recent posts matter. Okay. So again, it's looking at the big picture here. Okay. So if you haven't done that simple exercise where you're simply breaking down, I help blank solve blank so that they can blank, that's a fun activity, right? You can kind of pause this and then, go through and just make sure that is super clear. And that should end up again somewhere in your about section. And then make sure in that subheader, at the very top, you do have words in there that are very searchable. Now, the other thing that, I want to share is the first 50 words matter in your posts. Okay. Your beginning of your posts, right? It's no longer just a hook, for the reader. It's a signal, right? With this new algorithm change, your opening line should make it clear what the post is about and who it's for. So I know a lot of you guys, might be using AI as like a brainstorming tool or a way to help write content. Make sure you take note of some of these changes and you tweak it slightly because again, those first 50 words matter so much. So, maybe in the past we used to do hooks like, I've been thinking about something lately. That might feel conversational, but right now it doesn't really tell the LinkedIn reader much. Okay. A stronger opening could sound like, many consultants are creating LinkedIn content that attracts peers, not buyers. The problem is not the quality of their ideas. The problem is that their content is not connected to a clear business problem. So it tells us who it's for, consultants. What is it about? LinkedIn content, what problem it addresses, attracting peers instead of buyers, and why someone should keep reading. There's a specific issue to fix. So those are big, obviously important things to note. Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about dwell time and kind of how that, obviously is impacted on LinkedIn?
Well, there's one other thing that I wanted to kind of go back to when you mentioned the profile. We've talked about this before. Your headline is really, really important. And the fact is that your headline needs to state the specific problem you solve, who you solve it for, and you do, and we've talked about this, that you want to have specific SEO keywords that your ideal clients are actively searching for. People are still not doing this the right way. So let me give you there's two examples. There's one that is called the highly specific value prop or value proposition. So the person can have building content machines, founder at XYZ company, organic content production house, content strategist, speaker, right? So every single word that is used is intentional and it highlights the exact keywords that buyers would be searching for. So there's also another way that you can go about this, the search optimization keyword match. So this could be something like SEO consultant helping B2B SaaS teams grow through organic and AI search. So that is also something that people can use. So it could be SEO and AEO consultant for B2B SaaS. It's concise. It's the exact language that the buyers are actually typing into the search bar in today's AI landscape. So updating your headline in respect to this is also going to give you more searchability and more connectability. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. Now, the other thing that Nancy was talking about was dwell time. Now, for those that don't know what dwell time is the amount of time that a specific engager is spending on your post. Meaning, so there's LinkedIn has impressions, which means how many times your post has been shown to someone. So you may say you may get like it may say 250 impressions. That means your post was shown to 250 people. But the metrics that you need to start looking at is what is a direct result of the dwell time. So dwell time is the time that people spend watching your video, reading your post, reading your newsletter, engaging in your poll. The longer the dwell time, the more organic engagement you are going to have. I'm not talking about likes. I'm talking about comments. I'm talking about reshares and reposts. I'm talking about people voting in your poll. These are significant advanced metrics of dwell time because the longer that someone spends time on a post, they're going to end up creating and taking part in a deeper analytic, like not just hitting the like button or the support or whatever, actually commenting, actually voting, engaging with you. Because if that's why LinkedIn is rewarding people for their dwell time. Because if someone or many people are spending significant dwell time on someone's post, that is going to trigger something within the 360 Brew algorithm that LinkedIn is going to start showing that post to more people. So you'll start to see an increase in the impressions, which means the more people are seeing it, the more opportunity you will have to create more dwell time, which will create more engagement. So I actually tested this out myself because Nancy and I went over this a couple weeks ago that shorter form content is starting to outperform the longer text only posts. Newsletters are still highly, highly valuable, and they should be the only long form post you're actually putting out on LinkedIn. But Nancy and I have actually been shortening our text only posts because they're saying that the old way of, the 3,000 character Instagram type storytelling post is not hitting the way that it once was because people are not taking the time to actually read all of the words. So they're actually bouncing after that. That's why Nancy alluded to the first 50 words are probably the most important because that will hook someone into the piece of content, which will also create more dwell time. But the other thing that people need to understand is shorter form content, like vertical video on LinkedIn right now. I moved away from that for a while, but I've started to reintegrate it back into my content creation process. And each of the last videos that I've posted, and they're just like little 30-second clips from, discussions Nancy and I have, whether it's on the podcast or the YouTube channel. And I basically just clip it and then throw it up on LinkedIn. I put one up the other day and it got really nice engagement, like 12 or 13 likes. It got 11 comments. It was a repost. And that's what you're looking at. So many people focus on the impressions. Impressions mean nothing anymore if people aren't taking action. So that's why dwell time is so important because you want to hold that person's attention. You want to give value. You want to teach them something, but also give them some sort of action step or something to think about after they've read that post, watched and listened to that video, engaged in your poll, or read your newsletter.
Absolutely. And that's why, again, when we look at metrics, I can't tell you how many times, right? So many people and especially clients want to just focus on the other platform, right? Like the likes, the loves, the, vanity metrics. There are certain metrics now. And in fact, I just want to talk about one, in this episode that's going to be really important, and that's the saves. Saves are becoming more valuable than likes. And honestly, LinkedIn doesn't make it easy, right? To find out what's been saved and what hasn't. You actually have to go into the analytics and you've got to go into each post. But if you're doing this consistently, let's just say you make a routine for this once a month, you can go through and you can see what people are saving. And the thing is a save, even one, okay, tells LinkedIn that content was useful enough to return to it later. If one person saved it, that is so much more valuable than, I mean, to be honest with you guys, like tons of likes with no action.
So,
Okay.
well, I just want to kind of break this down really quickly. So, for those that are wondering where you can see this stuff, if you go to the homepage of LinkedIn, on the left-hand side of the column, you'll see something that says post impressions, and it has a hyperlink by the number of impressions. And if I click on that, it's going to take me to my content performance over the last 7 days. So I've seen a 27% increase, me personally, over the last 7 days. So impressions and cumulative. And if you scroll down, you're going to see something that says discovery. So the discovery basically is how many total impressions, but also how many members were reached. My numbers were 5,301 impressions, 2,448 members reached. But what you want to look at is the engagement, which is underneath of that. So it's going to give you the total amount of social engagements, meaning likes. So there was 174 engagements in my last 7 days of my content. So total. So there were 80 reactions, there were 88 comments, there were no reposts, but there were 6 saves, which is actually a really good metric. So that means I'm getting at least one save per day. And just so people know what that is, people are actually saving your content because they found it so valuable. They actually want to go back to it at a later time. So again, these are things that you can look at. Now, I can change this and see what it is over the last 28 days so I can see how things are performing. So over the last 30 days, my content is actually up 65% with nearly 32,000 impressions over the last month. But now you can see 252 reactions, 337 comments, one repost, 12 saves, and one send on LinkedIn, which means someone sent my post, directly messaged someone else because they found it so valuable. So these are all things that you should be looking at. You can also look at your audience analytics. So, follower growth. So it can show you cumulatively how much your follower growth has grown. So again, if I want to look at the 28-day cycle instead of the last 7 days, it's going to show me that over the last 28 days, things are growing. I'm getting, about 157 new followers from May 14th to June 10th. So again, that's going to give me all those specific metrics to look at. So as Nancy kind of alluded to, gone are the days of just trying to get a ton of impressions. I don't have some of the largest impressions, but I can tell you I have more social engagement than most people. The fact that I'm seeing, that many people liking and commenting, but also over the last 7 days, having 6 people actually save my content, that's telling me that I'm striking a chord in the right way.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we wanted to share, just two last points that we want to cover, kind of given this overview is, we talked a little bit about metrics, we talked a little bit about the content things, but engagement has always been very important. And whenever I say engagement, that's making sure that we're commenting, we're responding, we're actually, talking back and forth with others. I mean, LinkedIn has always been that platform that really harbors connection, right? It wants people to connect and have, conversation. In fact, right, just full transparency, I realized I'd actually gotten a lot of engagement on a LinkedIn article that I wrote the other day. And I hadn't checked, I hadn't, checked my posts and whatever. And I went back and looked and I was like, oh my goodness, I have like 4 comments here. And every single comment was a really great chance to actually strike up a conversation with someone. And every single comment that they had made was like, wow, this really hits home for me. And again, I'm able to take that conversation further. And instead of just saying, oh, thanks, or, I can ask specific questions. I can say, well, what specifically really stood out to you? We can start that happening. And the thing is again, it's showing that your content invites discussion. And that's always been something that LinkedIn cares about, right? Because that is what this platform is all about. So again, I'm not going to go on a whole long, in fact, we should probably do a separate episode about, how we can actually comment and some suggestions there. And then lastly, just to kind of bring things home is I want to remind all of you, right? We have really set out to help people create the best content possible on LinkedIn. Please don't be those people out there just creating generic AI content, okay? Because it is getting easier and easier than ever to ignore. Yes, AI can create content faster, but it can't replace you. It can't replace your lived experience, right, Scott?
Well, it's not hitting the easy button, that's hitting the lazy button.
It is. And I mean, when we look at the big picture and your content needs some soul at the end of
Well,
the day.
it needs a piece of you, and that's the thing. AI is a tool. It's not meant to replace you, it's meant to enhance you.
Yes.
Because so when you start to shift that narrative, which, oh, I'm just going to let AI do everything for me, and you shift your mindset, no, I wanted to enhance who I am as a human being and how I'm getting my message across. Now you're playing in the right sandbox.
100%. And so, again, I know this is a lot of different facts that we're kind of throwing at you. That's why we honestly, our motto and our kind of core values are always trying to keep things as simple and as fun as possible. That's exactly why, we created the Expert Content Society, some other things that we do. And we actually put together a really cool scorecard that really does a breakdown of, what is your thought leadership right now on LinkedIn? How are you showing up? What is your overall performance? And the output on that is pretty meaty. Okay. It will rank and rate kind of based on your strategy, what you're seeing. And at the end, you not only get, right, that little outline and that overview of some things that you can do, you have actionable takeaways, right, that you can go back to your profile and you can start to implement. And again, it's all around the algorithm updates and how to get you and your best foot forward out there on LinkedIn.
So again, if you guys would like to take our free LinkedIn assessment scorecard, all you have to do is type me in the comments if you're watching on social, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. If you're listening on the podcast, even easier, just go to the description of this episode, click the link, or just visit thetimetogrow.com and you can take the assessment there. So everyone, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Love and gratitude, and we'll talk to you next time.